Chapter 1: The Early Life of Alexandrina Victoria. Alexandrina Victoria was born in the early 19th century into a world shaped by shifting monarchies, political uncertainty, and complex family dynamics. She entered the world on a spring day at Kensington Palace in London. Her mother was the Duchess of Kent, a German-born princess who had married into the British royal family, and her father was the Duke of Kent, the fourth son of King George III. Victoria's childhood began under circumstances that would eventually shape her personality, her habits, and her future role as a monarch. Her father died when she was only a few months old, leaving the young princess and her mother in a financially insecure position compared with other royal households. Much of the responsibility for her upbringing fell to her mother and to Sir John Conroy, a military officer who became a powerful, and at times controversial, figure within their household. Her early years were structured according to a strict set of rules known as the Kensington system. This system was designed by her mother and Conroy to control her environment, manage her education, and limit her independence. It restricted her friendships, limited her freedom to explore, and ensured she was constantly under supervision. The intention behind the system was to prepare her for a significant role while keeping her isolated from court politics and potential influences that her mother believed could be harmful. Daily life for the young princess was filled with lessons, routines, and careful planning. She studied languages, including German and French, and later added Italian. She was taught history, geography, religion, and moral instruction, all with the expectation that she would one day hold an important position in the royal hierarchy. Although these lessons were thorough, the strict supervision meant she rarely interacted with other children. Her closest companion became her half-sister, Princess Feodora, who eventually married and moved away, leaving Victoria devastated by the loss of her only youthful confidant. The Kensington system attempted to mold her into a dependent figure, but it also produced unintended effects. The restrictions placed upon her gave her a strong sense of resilience and self-awareness. She developed a keen sensitivity to her surroundings and a determination to assert her own judgment once she became old enough to exercise it. The absence of emotional warmth within her home environment encouraged her to seek stability through discipline and personal responsibility. These traits would later influence her approach to politics, family life, and public duty. Although confined, she experienced occasional events that hinted at a different future. She visited royal residences such as Windsor Castle and became familiar with the broader royal family, including King George IV and later King William IV. These encounters were highly structured and limited in emotional closeness, but they established a connection between Victoria and the monarchy she would one day lead. Her relationship with King William IV was particularly significant. Although not deeply personal, he grew increasingly concerned about the influence of Conroy and the Duchess of Kent, and he hoped Victoria would gain her independence once she came of age. Her education included more than academic lessons. She learned drawing, music, and dancing, which were considered essential accomplishments for a young royal. She became an accomplished sketcher and maintained a lifelong habit of keeping detailed journals. These journals reveal insight into her childhood thoughts, the sense of loneliness, the desire for greater freedom, and her developing understanding of the burdens placed upon her. Even at a young age, she displayed a strong sense of identity and a clear awareness of the responsibilities that might await her. As she grew older, the question of succession became increasingly important. King William IV had no surviving legitimate children, and Victoria became the presumed heir to the throne. This position added pressure to her already carefully managed upbringing. Her every move was monitored, and her schedule was arranged with the idea that she needed to be constantly prepared for the possibility of early rule. Her mother and Conroy attempted to make themselves indispensable, encouraging the idea that Victoria should rely on them entirely. However, Victoria resisted these expectations and began to form her own opinions about the people around her. By her early teenage years, she had become aware of the political tension surrounding her upbringing. She sensed the distrust that many members of the royal family felt toward Conroy and toward the control he exerted. She also became aware that once she reached the age of majority, she would be able to break free from their influence. This growing awareness strengthened her resolve and shaped her understanding of authority and personal independence. Her 16th and 17th years brought increasing public attention. She attended her first public engagements and gradually became more visible to the nation. During this period, her health fluctuated. The strain of her demanding schedule, limited freedoms, and household tension affected her physically and emotionally. However, her determination remained steady, and she continued to prepare for the responsibilities that might lie ahead. As she approached adulthood, her education broadened to include constitutional matters, the structure of government, and the role of the monarchy. Advisors outside her immediate household began to influence her understanding of British politics, especially her future relationship with ministers and parliament. These lessons proved essential, as they provided her with the tools she would need to navigate political life responsibly and effectively. On the eve of her 18th birthday, Victoria understood that her life was about to change. The age of legal independence would release her from the Kensington system, allowing her to make her own decisions and choose her own advisors. The tension in the household grew as Conroy attempted to persuade her to sign documents granting him considerable authority once she became queen. She refused, demonstrating a strength of will that had been building for years. This moment marked the final stage of her transformation from a controlled child into a young woman ready to assert her own independence. When she finally reached the age of 18, she gained the freedom she had long awaited. Only a few weeks later, the death of King William IV placed the weight of the British crown upon her. Her early life, shaped by restriction, discipline, and emotional endurance, had prepared her for a reign that would become one of the longest and most transformative in British history. Her upbringing had not been easy, but it gave her qualities that defined her monarchy: a deep sense of duty, a strong moral compass, and a commitment to stability. The early life of Alexandrina Victoria created the foundation for a reign that would oversee enormous industrial, social, and political change. The young princess who had once been carefully controlled would become a queen who shaped an entire era. Chapter 2: Becoming Queen at 18. When Victoria reached her 18th year, she entered a period of anticipation and careful preparation. As the acknowledged heir to the throne, she knew that her responsibilities would soon expand beyond the routines and restrictions of her upbringing. King William IV was elderly and in declining health, and it was widely understood that her accession could occur sooner rather than later. Although still living under the structured supervision of the Kensington household, Victoria was more informed, more self-assured, and increasingly aware of the political landscape around her. Her 18th birthday granted her legal independence, removing the authority her mother and Sir John Conroy had tried so hard to maintain. This shift came at a crucial moment, as events soon propelled her into her new role. In the early hours of a June morning, the atmosphere at Kensington Palace changed dramatically. Messengers from Windsor arrived bearing news that King William IV had died during the night. The throne had passed to the young Victoria. She was now Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. The transition occurred quietly, but its significance was immense. She had gone to bed as a princess and awoke as queen, responsible for governing a nation already undergoing profound social and industrial transformation. The shift marked the beginning of a new era. Upon receiving the news, Victoria followed the protocols expected of an ascending monarch. She adjusted her appearance to reflect her new status, preparing to meet the officials who had gathered to inform her formally of her accession. Her first official responsibility as queen was to hold what became known as the First Privy Council. This meeting took place later that morning at Kensington Palace. It was an event closely observed by politicians, advisors, and members of the royal household, many of whom were eager to see how the young queen would conduct herself. The First Privy Council was a defining moment in Victoria's early reign. Despite having only recently reached adulthood, she carried herself with composure and seriousness. The council was composed of senior statesmen, judges, and advisors who had served under the previous king. They watched as she took her place at the head of the meeting. At this council, she formally accepted her role as queen, made her initial official statements, and approved the necessary documents confirming her accession. She also expressed her intention to rely on experienced ministers and to follow constitutional practices. Her clear voice, calm manner, and sense of duty left a strong impression on those present. One of the most notable figures at the council was Lord Melbourne, the Prime Minister. He recognized immediately that the young queen possessed a maturity beyond her years. His steady guidance would soon become essential to her early reign. Although Victoria had limited political experience, she demonstrated an instinctive understanding of the gravity of her position. Observers noted her ability to remain composed during an event that would have overwhelmed many older and more experienced individuals. Her performance at the First Privy Council strengthened public confidence and reassured the political establishment that the monarchy remained stable. News of the new queen spread quickly throughout London. By late morning, crowds began gathering outside the palace and in the surrounding streets. Although the city had seen many changes in monarchs across the centuries, the accession of a young woman, barely an adult, captured public interest in a unique way. Many people had watched Victoria's life from a distance, aware of the strict household in which she had been raised. There was curiosity about how such a carefully protected young woman would rule a modernizing nation. The mood in the capital was a mixture of excitement, expectation, and cautious optimism. Early newspaper reports emphasized her youth, her character, and the symbolic significance of her reign. Britain was entering an age defined by industrial progress, scientific discovery, and expanding empire. The idea of a young monarch ascending the throne seemed to align with the energy of the times. The contrast between her sheltered upbringing and the dynamic state of the country created a narrative that intrigued the public. People were eager to see how she would adapt to the responsibilities placed upon her. Throughout the day, official announcements were made across London, in other British cities, and eventually throughout the empire. Church bells rang, proclamations were read aloud, and government offices began the administrative work associated with a change in monarch. Despite her youth, the transition was smooth and orderly. Britain's constitutional system ensured continuity, and Victoria's steady behaviour reinforced the sense of stability. One of the earliest public reactions came from those who saw her at Kensington Palace as she prepared to move to Buckingham Palace, which would become her official residence. Observers described her appearance as modest and dignified. Her confident yet respectful manner reassured both officials and the public that she understood the importance of her new position. The people admired her poise, especially given the circumstances of her upbringing, which had limited her public exposure. Her first steps into royal life were marked by a growing sense of independence. She was no longer under the restrictive control of the Kensington system. Her actions reflected her determination to rule according to her own judgment. Her move to Buckingham Palace symbolized the beginning of her new life. The palace itself had not yet become the central symbol of monarchy it would later be. It required improvements and adjustments before it was truly suitable for a reigning monarch. Nonetheless, Victoria embraced it as her new home and administrative center. Her arrival at the palace was watched by crowds who gathered to witness the beginning of a new reign. Many people expressed hope that the young queen would bring renewed dignity and direction to the monarchy. As the first days of her reign continued, Victoria began meeting government ministers, reviewing documents, and learning the daily responsibilities of monarchy. Although she had studied constitutional matters, she now faced the reality of leading a nation. Her early meetings with ministers were marked by attentiveness and a willingness to listen. She relied heavily on Lord Melbourne, whose experience provided a guiding influence. Their working relationship helped shape her early decisions and eased the transition from princess to sovereign. Across the country, reactions varied depending on region, class, and political opinion. Many people welcomed the idea of a queen who represented youth and renewal. Others were uncertain about how she would handle the complex issues facing the nation, including political reform, economic challenges, and the impact of industrialization. However, even those who doubted her experience acknowledged the importance of stability and continuity. The smooth accession, combined with her confident first council appearance, provided reassurance during a time of rapid change. International reactions also played a role in shaping early perceptions of the new monarch. European courts took note of her accession, aware that Britain remained an influential power. Diplomats watched closely to see how the young queen would handle foreign relations, alliances, and the expectations of her advisors. Many viewed her accession as an opportunity for Britain to strengthen its position in European affairs, especially given her youth and the potential for her to establish new relationships with foreign leaders. The early days of Victoria's reign established a foundation that would support her throughout her long rule. The confidence she displayed during the First Privy Council, the public's interest and optimism, and the steady guidance of Lord Melbourne all contributed to a promising beginning. Although the challenges ahead were substantial, the manner in which she accepted her responsibilities demonstrated that the monarchy was in capable hands. Her accession at 18 marked a turning point not only for the British monarchy but for the nation as a whole. It symbolized the end of one era and the beginning of another. As she settled into her new role, she began the journey that would define her life and reshape the history of Britain. The young queen who ascended the throne with calm determination would eventually preside over a period of profound transformation. Chapter 3: The Early Reign and Scandals. Queen Victoria's accession at 18 marked the beginning of a period of adjustment, both for herself and for the British government. Though she had received instruction in constitutional matters, she faced the immense challenge of translating theory into practice. The young queen quickly encountered the complexities of political life, court expectations, and public scrutiny. Her early reign was characterized by learning, occasional misjudgments, and a series of events that revealed both her inexperience and her determination to grow into her role. One of the earliest political challenges she faced was what came to be known as the bedchamber crisis. This situation arose shortly after she became queen, when Prime Minister Lord Melbourne resigned due to political pressure from the opposition. Melbourne recommended that she invite a new ministry to form a government. The new ministers requested that Victoria replace several of her ladies of the bedchamber, who were closely associated with Melbourne and the Whig Party, with women sympathetic to the Tory party. These ladies were considered more than attendants, they served as informal advisers and had the Queen's confidence. Victoria's refusal to comply reflected her loyalty to the women she trusted, but it created a constitutional dilemma. Her decision was interpreted by some as political partisanship, which was not customary for a constitutional monarch. The crisis highlighted her naivety regarding the subtle conventions of political balance and her limited experience in understanding the boundaries of royal influence. The resolution of the bedchamber crisis established important precedents for her reign. Victoria's firmness and her loyalty to those she trusted revealed her personal integrity, but also demonstrated the need to separate personal preferences from political responsibility. The situation required negotiation, diplomacy, and consultation with senior political figures, which Victoria handled under guidance from Lord Melbourne. Through this event, she learned a critical lesson about the delicate position of a constitutional monarch and the importance of impartiality in political affairs. The experience began to shape her understanding of the role she was to play, balancing authority with deference to established parliamentary procedures. In addition to the bedchamber crisis, Victoria's early reign was marked by other instances of inexperience that tested her judgment. She was eager to assert her authority and often expressed opinions on matters that were beyond her practical understanding. This tendency reflected her intelligence and engagement with the governance of the country, but it also exposed her to criticism from ministers and members of the press. She occasionally attempted to influence policy directly, unaware of the constitutional limitations placed upon the sovereign. Over time, these early mistakes became valuable lessons in political prudence, teaching her to distinguish between matters of ceremonial authority and those requiring ministerial discretion. The young queen also faced scrutiny in her personal life. Her independent spirit, assertiveness, and the visible confidence she displayed attracted attention, sometimes leading to speculation about her temperament and suitability for the throne. At the same time, she had to navigate the expectations of the royal family, the court, and society at large. Balancing personal inclination with public duty became a recurring theme in her early experiences. These pressures encouraged her to adopt a measured approach to decision-making and to rely more consistently on experienced advisors. Victoria's growing awareness of her responsibilities was complemented by careful observation of political practice. She attended cabinet meetings, reviewed state documents, and observed her ministers in action. Lord Melbourne's mentorship proved invaluable during this period. He offered guidance, explanation, and correction where necessary, allowing Victoria to learn the subtleties of constitutional monarchy. She gradually developed confidence in her own judgment while recognizing the importance of experienced counsel. This period of apprenticeship strengthened her understanding of governance and helped to establish her reputation as a conscientious and attentive monarch. Public perception of Victoria during these early years was generally positive, though tempered by curiosity and occasional concern over her youth. The nation observed her learning to exercise authority with care and propriety. Her composure in the face of political challenges reassured many that the monarchy remained stable despite her inexperience. However, some critics noted that her initial naivety could leave her vulnerable to manipulation or errors in judgment. These observations reinforced the importance of her ongoing education in matters of state, foreign policy, and ceremonial responsibilities. During this period, Victoria also became aware of the significance of public opinion and the growing influence of the press. Newspapers reported on her actions, decisions, and personal conduct with increasing attention. This scrutiny added another layer of complexity to her early reign, forcing her to consider how her private choices might be interpreted by the public and how to communicate her authority responsibly. Through experience, she developed strategies for maintaining dignity, projecting stability, and responding appropriately to public expectations. Her early mistakes and learning experiences were not limited to political affairs. Victoria also navigated issues within the royal household, including the management of servants, advisors, and courtiers. She gained experience in leadership, negotiation, and delegation, recognizing that her authority extended beyond political matters to include the effective administration of the royal household. These lessons in management and interpersonal relationships would continue to serve her throughout her reign. By the conclusion of these formative years, Victoria had acquired a deeper understanding of her role as queen. The bedchamber crisis and other early challenges taught her the importance of patience, impartiality, and reliance on experienced advisors. She gradually learned to balance her personal instincts with the constitutional obligations of monarchy. Her early triumphs and setbacks alike contributed to her growing reputation as a ruler who combined diligence, moral integrity, and conscientious oversight of her duties. This period of political apprenticeship also prepared her for the next stage of her life, marriage and partnership with Prince Albert. The lessons she learned from these early experiences informed her interactions with her future husband, her management of court and family, and her approach to governance. Victoria's early reign was a time of significant growth, in which youthful naivety was gradually replaced by measured judgment and political competence. The challenges she faced during this period laid the groundwork for the long and influential reign that would follow, establishing patterns of responsibility, discernment, and prudence that endured throughout her lifetime. Chapter 4: Courtship and Marriage to Prince Albert. The early years of Queen Victoria's reign were not only marked by political learning and public scrutiny but also by the beginnings of a partnership that would profoundly shape her personal life and the monarchy itself. This was the meeting and eventual marriage of Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, whose presence in Victoria's life would become one of the defining relationships of the 19th century. Prince Albert was born into a German ducal family in the early 19th century, raised with a strong sense of duty, discipline, and education. From a young age, he demonstrated intellectual curiosity, a talent for the arts, and a dedication to moral and civic responsibility. His upbringing emphasized preparation for roles in public service, governance, and leadership, attributes that would later complement those of the Queen. Albert's reputation across European courts was one of intelligence, reliability, and decorum, qualities that made him a suitable match for a monarch of Victoria's stature. Victoria first encountered Albert through family connections. Both were related through extended European royal networks, which commonly arranged introductions between young royals to strengthen dynastic ties. Their initial meeting took place when Victoria was still in her late teens, shortly after her accession. Observers noted the immediate impression Albert made with his poise, intellect, and the respectful yet confident manner in which he conducted himself. Although Victoria was aware of his familial and social position, her initial assessment was influenced by his character, composure, and evident understanding of the responsibilities of public life. Their courtship developed carefully and deliberately, reflecting the formal expectations of royal protocol. Letters and visits allowed them to observe each other's temperaments, values, and inclinations. Victoria, having experienced the strict controls of her early upbringing, approached this new relationship with a mixture of curiosity and caution. She observed Albert's behavior, considering his suitability as a partner for life and as a companion who could share the responsibilities of monarchy. Albert, in turn, recognized Victoria's intelligence, determination, and sense of duty. Their mutual respect and admiration grew steadily as they learned more about each other's character and priorities. The Queen's personal journals and correspondence reveal that she was deeply impressed by Albert's intellect, taste in the arts, and commitment to moral principles. She valued his counsel, his insights into political and social matters, and his vision for public service. For Albert, Victoria's combination of youth, intelligence, and responsibility distinguished her from many contemporary figures of royalty. Their shared understanding of duty and service created a foundation for a relationship that would balance affection with partnership in governance. As their courtship progressed, Victoria's family and advisors observed the developing bond. While some initially questioned the prudence of marrying a foreign prince, it became increasingly clear that Albert's character, education, and temperament made him an ideal consort. His potential to support Victoria in her role as queen, provide guidance in political and administrative matters, and strengthen ties with European courts made the match appealing both personally and diplomatically. In addition, their shared values in religion, morality, and cultural pursuits aligned closely, reinforcing the likelihood of a harmonious partnership. The formal announcement of their engagement followed careful deliberation, in accordance with royal protocol. Victoria, having considered Albert's character, abilities, and suitability, agreed to marry. Their engagement was celebrated not only within their immediate families but also among government officials and the wider public. The union promised to bring both personal fulfillment and political stability. Public reaction was largely positive, as the nation anticipated the benefits of a consort who could advise the young queen and participate actively in her reign. The wedding itself was a significant event, conducted with adherence to tradition while reflecting the personal preferences of the couple. It took place at a prominent royal residence and was attended by close family members, diplomats, and representatives of European courts. The ceremony was marked by dignity and decorum, highlighting the formal and political significance of the marriage alongside the personal commitment between Victoria and Albert. The event symbolized not only the joining of two individuals but also the strengthening of the monarchy at a pivotal moment in British history. Following their marriage, Victoria and Albert established a domestic partnership that blended affection, mutual respect, and shared responsibility. Albert assumed the role of consort, supporting the Queen in her public duties, engaging with government officials, and participating in state affairs without seeking to override the constitutional authority of Victoria herself. Their collaboration combined the strengths of both individuals, Victoria's authority and constitutional position, and Albert's intellect, organizational skill, and ability to advise on matters of state and culture. This partnership became a model for the supportive role of consorts in constitutional monarchies. Victoria's personal life gained stability and encouragement through her marriage. The young queen, who had previously experienced a restrictive and emotionally distant upbringing, now enjoyed a companion who understood her duties and shared her ambitions. Albert's presence provided guidance in political, social, and cultural matters, reinforcing the confidence she had developed in the early years of her reign. His influence extended to areas such as education, reform initiatives, patronage of the arts, and charitable engagement, all of which contributed to the broader modernization of the monarchy and the enrichment of British cultural life. The Queen's journals and correspondence from this period demonstrate a deep emotional attachment to Albert, alongside recognition of his practical contribution to governance and public service. Their partnership was founded on mutual respect, shared moral and religious values, and an understanding of the responsibilities inherent in royal life. It exemplified the combination of personal affection and professional cooperation, which allowed both Victoria and Albert to navigate the complex demands of monarchy while maintaining a stable family environment. Their marriage also had broader implications for international relations. Albert's German heritage and connections to European royal houses facilitated diplomatic engagement, reinforced alliances, and strengthened Britain's position on the continent. The couple's ability to present a united and competent front in matters of state enhanced the monarchy's prestige and demonstrated the value of a consort whose role complemented, rather than overshadowed, that of the sovereign. This aspect of their partnership would prove influential in both domestic and foreign affairs. Victoria and Albert's early years together were characterized by careful management of court life, public duties, and private domestic arrangements. Their shared commitment to duty, learning, and cultural engagement shaped the expectations of monarchy for subsequent generations. The strength and success of their marriage derived not only from personal affection but also from a deliberate understanding of each other's roles and responsibilities, creating a foundation for a reign that would endure for decades. In summary, the courtship and marriage of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert represented a turning point in her personal and public life. It provided emotional stability, intellectual companionship, and practical support for the young queen as she navigated the complexities of constitutional monarchy. Their partnership combined love with shared responsibility, setting a precedent for royal marriages and contributing significantly to the effectiveness and dignity of Victoria's reign. This period marked the beginning of a lifelong collaboration that would profoundly influence the British monarchy and the nation. Chapter 5: Family Life, 9 Children and Royal Dynasties. Following her marriage to Prince Albert, Queen Victoria embarked on a period of family life that would profoundly influence both her personal world and the broader European royal landscape. Over the course of their marriage, Victoria and Albert had 9 children, each of whom played a pivotal role in shaping dynastic connections across the continent. These children not only extended the reach of the British monarchy but also established Victoria as a figure later known as the Grandmother of Europe. The first child, a daughter, was born in the early years of the marriage. Victoria experienced both joy and the challenges of early motherhood. She took her responsibilities seriously, combining affection with a disciplined approach informed by her own upbringing. Prince Albert supported her in these duties, offering guidance on child-rearing, education, and household management. The Queen's approach to parenting emphasized moral development, intellectual education, and preparation for future public roles. This framework applied to each of their subsequent children, creating a cohesive and structured family environment. Over the next several years, Victoria and Albert welcomed a succession of children, alternating between sons and daughters. Their second child, a son, would eventually play a role in the succession of the British throne. The Queen's attention to education extended to all of her children, with each receiving instruction in languages, history, music, and cultural matters appropriate to their station. Victoria and Albert were keenly aware that their children's marriages and alliances would carry both personal and political significance, reflecting the interconnected nature of European royalty at the time. The marriage of the Queen's children to foreign princes and princesses strategically strengthened ties between Britain and other European states. Victoria's eldest daughter married into the Prussian royal family, establishing a link that would later influence German politics and alliances. Another daughter married a Scandinavian prince, creating a bond with the monarchies of Denmark and Norway. These unions exemplified the careful consideration given to marital alliances and the role of royal children in extending diplomatic influence. Each marriage was not only a personal matter but also a tool of statecraft, reinforcing Britain's presence on the European stage. Victoria's sons also played a crucial role in dynastic matters. Her eldest son was groomed to succeed her on the British throne, receiving rigorous preparation in governance, law, and public duty. Other sons were positioned to assume significant roles within European courts, further extending the influence of the British monarchy. Prince Albert's guidance ensured that their children were equipped with both the education and the understanding of responsibility necessary to navigate their future roles effectively. The Queen maintained detailed records of her children's lives, documenting their education, health, and public engagements. These records reflect her deep interest in their development and her desire to maintain a structured household despite the demands of monarchy. Victoria's dedication to her children was balanced with her duties as sovereign. She sought to cultivate both personal attachment and a sense of duty within each child, fostering a blend of affection and responsibility that would influence their contributions to European affairs. The offspring of Victoria and Albert played a key role in shaping royal networks throughout Europe. One daughter's marriage into the German Empire created a direct connection to the Kaiser, while another daughter's marriage into the Russian imperial family provided links to Eastern European courts. Similarly, sons married into various noble houses, reinforcing alliances and enhancing Britain's diplomatic reach. Over time, Victoria became known not only as a monarch but also as a matriarch whose descendants occupied thrones across the continent. The interconnectedness of her children earned her the enduring title of the Grandmother of Europe. Beyond the political and dynastic implications, Victoria's family life shaped the domestic and cultural tone of the British court. The Queen and Prince Albert emphasized moral conduct, religious instruction, and the importance of duty in both public and private life. They also encouraged engagement with the arts, sciences, and charitable initiatives, ensuring that their children developed a sense of responsibility that extended beyond personal or national interests. This holistic approach to family life reinforced the values the couple considered essential to effective governance and social influence. The health and well-being of the Queen's children was central to family planning and management. Victoria experienced both periods of joy and sorrow, facing challenges common to large families of the era. Infant mortality and illness occasionally affected her household, prompting careful attention to medical care and domestic hygiene. Despite these difficulties, she remained steadfast in her commitment to raising her children with both affection and discipline. The experiences of parenthood strengthened her understanding of human development and informed her approach to public service, particularly in areas related to health, education, and welfare. The domestic environment of Victoria and Albert's household combined privacy with public duty. Their children were educated at home under the supervision of tutors and governesses, reflecting both the norms of royal upbringing and the practical considerations of their station. Travel, court appearances, and formal introductions to foreign dignitaries were incorporated into their upbringing to prepare them for future roles. The Queen's meticulous attention to schedules, education, and social etiquette ensured that her children were well prepared for their responsibilities. Victoria's family life also influenced the monarchy's public image. The Queen's devotion to her children and her visible role as a mother enhanced her popularity and demonstrated her ability to combine personal life with public responsibility. Portraits, public appearances, and official photographs reinforced this perception, presenting an image of a sovereign who was both dutiful and devoted to her family. This combination of domestic virtue and political authority strengthened the monarchy's appeal during a period of social and industrial transformation. As the years passed, Victoria's children continued to marry into various European dynasties, cementing alliances and extending Britain's influence. These marriages had long-term implications for European politics, diplomacy, and succession. The Queen's strategic management of these alliances reflected her awareness of the broader consequences of royal family connections. By the middle of her reign, Victoria's descendants occupied thrones and held influential positions across Europe, ensuring the presence of British influence in multiple courts. Victoria's role as mother and matriarch continued alongside her duties as monarch. She balanced the challenges of raising 9 children with the demands of governance, ceremonial obligations, and public representation. The skills she had developed in her early life, discipline, observation, and attention to detail, proved invaluable in maintaining order and continuity within both the household and the monarchy. Her commitment to family and duty reinforced the stability of her reign and contributed to her enduring legacy. In conclusion, the family life of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert was central to both the personal and political dimensions of her reign. The birth and upbringing of 9 children, combined with carefully arranged marriages, strengthened dynastic connections across Europe and earned Victoria the title of the Grandmother of Europe. Her attention to education, moral instruction, and public responsibility ensured that her children were equipped to fulfill both personal and dynastic roles. Through these efforts, Victoria shaped not only the future of the British monarchy but also the broader landscape of European royalty, leaving a lasting influence that extended well beyond her lifetime. Chapter 6: Prince Albert's Influence on Britain. Prince Albert, consort to Queen Victoria, exerted a profound influence on British society, politics, culture, and education throughout the 19th century. Although he held no constitutional authority as consort, his intelligence, dedication, and vision allowed him to shape public initiatives and reform movements that would leave lasting impacts on the nation. Albert's influence extended across multiple spheres, from industry and science to the arts and moral improvement, reflecting his commitment to public service and societal progress. One of the most notable areas of Albert's contribution was the promotion of industrial and scientific advancement. He possessed a keen interest in technological innovation and the practical applications of knowledge. Early in his marriage, he observed the rapid changes occurring during the Industrial Revolution, including the growth of factories, railways, and mechanical production. Albert recognized that industrial progress could enhance national prosperity, but he also understood that it carried social challenges, including poor working conditions and the need for education. His advocacy for innovation combined with concern for human welfare became a hallmark of his influence. Albert's efforts culminated in the organization of the Great Exhibition of the mid-19th century, a world fair that showcased industrial, scientific, and artistic achievements from across Britain and beyond. The exhibition was held in a specially constructed building, which later became known as the Crystal Palace, a marvel of glass and iron engineering. The event demonstrated Britain's industrial capabilities, fostered international collaboration, and provided an opportunity to promote design, efficiency, and innovation. Prince Albert played a central role in planning and overseeing the exhibition, from conceptualization to execution, ensuring that it reflected both technological excellence and cultural sophistication. The exhibition also emphasized education and accessibility. Albert believed that knowledge should be shared widely, and he sought to inspire public engagement with science, industry, and the arts. The displays highlighted advancements in manufacturing, engineering, and applied science, demonstrating their relevance to everyday life. By combining spectacle with education, Albert reinforced the idea that industrial and cultural development were intertwined with national identity and progress. The Great Exhibition became a model for subsequent international expositions and demonstrated the capacity of the monarchy to foster national pride and advancement without encroaching upon parliamentary authority. Albert's influence extended into the arts and cultural institutions. He advocated for the establishment of museums, galleries, and educational societies, believing that public access to culture was essential for moral and intellectual improvement. His guidance contributed to the development of institutions such as the Victoria and Albert Museum, which provided exhibitions, collections, and learning opportunities for a broad public audience. Albert emphasized the importance of combining aesthetic appreciation with technical skill, encouraging both artistry and practical knowledge in design, manufacturing, and education. This focus reflected his conviction that culture, industry, and education were interconnected. Beyond his cultural contributions, Albert sought to reform areas of public administration and policy. He advised on initiatives related to education, public health, and social welfare, encouraging improvements that reflected the moral and civic values he shared with Victoria. His approach combined careful study, consultation with experts, and attention to implementation, allowing him to influence policy effectively without overstepping the constitutional role of the sovereign. Albert's efforts reinforced the monarchy's image as a force for social good, linking the crown to the advancement of knowledge, civic virtue, and national progress. Prince Albert also shaped the monarchy itself, promoting efficiency, organization, and responsibility within the royal household. He encouraged rational administration, clear delegation of duties, and the professional management of royal estates and finances. These changes enhanced the effectiveness of the monarchy, ensuring that the institution could meet the demands of a growing empire and expanding public expectations. His organizational skills complemented Victoria's authority, allowing the royal family to model discipline, propriety, and public service. Albert's influence was also evident in education. He supported schools, technical institutions, and the dissemination of scientific knowledge, recognizing that the nation's future depended on an informed and skilled population. He encouraged the study of practical subjects alongside classical education, anticipating the demands of industrial and economic development. By promoting accessible and structured learning, Albert helped to establish a framework for lifelong education and public engagement with science and technology. In addition to these initiatives, Albert championed moral and philanthropic causes. He supported charities, religious institutions, and social welfare organizations that addressed poverty, health, and moral improvement. His efforts reflected both personal conviction and a belief in the monarchy's responsibility to model virtue and civic responsibility. Through these activities, he demonstrated that influence could be exercised effectively through guidance, example, and practical engagement rather than formal authority. The partnership between Victoria and Albert amplified his impact. Victoria respected his judgment, relied on his advice, and incorporated his insights into governance and public initiatives. Albert's guidance helped Victoria navigate complex social, cultural, and political landscapes, reinforcing her authority while providing practical solutions and strategic vision. Their collaboration demonstrated how a consort could exercise influence indirectly, shaping national development and the effectiveness of monarchy through counsel, leadership, and moral example. Albert's role in industrial and cultural reform also extended to public health and urban development. He supported initiatives aimed at improving living conditions, addressing sanitation, and promoting civic infrastructure. He understood the social consequences of industrialization and sought to mitigate its negative effects through education, organization, and reform. This holistic approach reinforced the notion that progress required careful planning, moral responsibility, and public engagement. The prince's interest in international affairs was closely linked to his cultural and industrial advocacy. He encouraged collaboration with other European states, promoting the exchange of knowledge, technology, and artistic achievements. Through these connections, Britain's reputation as a center of innovation, culture, and industrial leadership was enhanced. Albert's vision combined national pride with international cooperation, demonstrating foresight in both domestic and global matters. Albert's influence remained a defining feature of Victoria's reign until his untimely death. His initiatives, ideas, and guidance left an indelible mark on Britain's cultural, educational, and industrial landscape. By combining intellectual insight, organizational skill, and moral conviction, he elevated the monarchy's capacity to contribute to national development and public welfare. His partnership with Victoria exemplified the potential of shared vision and complementary skills, shaping both personal and public life in enduring ways. In summary, Prince Albert's influence on Britain extended far beyond the role of consort. Through his promotion of industry, science, the arts, education, and public welfare, he left a lasting imprint on the nation. His guidance strengthened Queen Victoria's reign, improved public institutions, and demonstrated the power of moral, intellectual, and practical leadership. The Great Exhibition, cultural reforms, and educational initiatives exemplified his vision for a modern, responsible, and engaged monarchy. Albert's contributions to British life illustrate how influence, exercised with insight and integrity, can shape the course of a nation's history and leave a legacy that endures for generations. Chapter 7: The Death of Prince Albert and Victoria's Mourning. The death of Prince Albert in the mid-19th century marked one of the most profound turning points in Queen Victoria's personal and public life. Albert, consort, advisor, and life partner, had been central to the Queen's reign for nearly 2 decades, guiding her through governance, social reform, and family life. His passing left a void that Victoria experienced with deep emotional intensity, shaping both her private conduct and her approach to monarchy for the remainder of her reign. Albert's health had been fragile in the later years of his life. Despite his robust intellect and energetic involvement in public affairs, he struggled with recurring illnesses that reflected the physical demands of his work and the stress of continuous public engagement. In the months preceding his death, his condition deteriorated, and medical attention became increasingly frequent. The Queen was closely involved in his care, providing support, monitoring his treatment, and offering constant companionship. Their partnership, which had encompassed shared duties in family, governance, and social reform, meant that Victoria felt the weight of his illness acutely. Albert died in the mid-19th century after a period of illness that underscored the limitations of contemporary medicine. The official cause was recorded as a combination of ailments, with kidney failure and other complications contributing to his passing. The event sent shockwaves through the royal household, the government, and the public, as Albert had been a visible figure whose influence extended across political, social, and cultural spheres. For Victoria, the loss was deeply personal, marking the end of a partnership that had shaped her life and the monarchy itself. Following his death, Queen Victoria entered a period of profound mourning that would last for the remainder of her life. She withdrew from much public activity, reducing her appearances at official ceremonies, court functions, and social engagements. Her grief was both private and intensely visible, influencing the perception of the monarchy. The Queen's withdrawal reflected the depth of her attachment to Albert and the centrality of his guidance in both her personal and public life. Victoria's mourning attire and adherence to strict rituals became symbols of her devotion and loss, reinforcing her emotional connection to the late prince. The Queen's seclusion had consequences for governance and public perception. While ministers and advisors continued to administer affairs of state, Victoria's reduced public visibility led to speculation about her willingness and ability to fulfill royal responsibilities. Despite these challenges, she continued to exercise constitutional authority, guided by the principles established during Albert's life and by the advice of trusted ministers. The early stages of mourning were marked by careful management of the balance between private grief and public duty, reflecting both personal loss and institutional responsibility. Victoria's response to Albert's death also influenced the development of national mourning practices. Her adherence to ritual, her extended period of visible grief, and her dedication to memorializing her husband set precedents for public expressions of mourning in Britain and among European royalty. Monuments, commemorative events, and the construction of memorials reflected both personal tribute and societal recognition of Albert's contributions. The Queen's actions reinforced the role of monarchy as a symbol of continuity, emotional resonance, and moral example during times of loss. Albert's passing also affected the royal household and family life. The Queen, now the sole authority within the domestic sphere, continued to oversee the education and upbringing of their children. The experience of grief reinforced her sense of responsibility and her protective instincts, particularly in relation to her eldest son, who would eventually succeed her. Victoria's focus on family life intensified, as she sought to preserve the values, guidance, and stability that Albert had instilled in their household. Her devotion to her children provided a source of continuity amidst personal tragedy and ensured that Albert's influence continued through the next generation. The Queen's long mourning period also shaped her interactions with politics and government. She continued to meet ministers and participate in constitutional matters, but her reduced social presence altered the dynamics of court life. Albert's prior role as intermediary and advisor had balanced her authority with practical guidance, and his absence required Victoria to adapt to these responsibilities independently. Over time, she developed new methods for consultation, decision-making, and delegation, applying lessons learned from their shared governance to navigate her duties with confidence and caution. Victoria's grief had international resonance. European courts, where Albert had maintained diplomatic connections, observed her mourning with respect and sympathy. The extended public demonstration of devotion elevated both her personal reputation and the symbolic role of the monarchy in representing loyalty, virtue, and emotional integrity. This period also reinforced Britain's position within European royal networks, as Victoria's children and relatives maintained ties with foreign courts, continuing Albert's legacy of dynastic engagement and international diplomacy. Throughout the mourning years, the Queen's personal journals, correspondence, and official records reveal the depth of her attachment to Albert. She documented his contributions to governance, culture, and family life, reflecting on their shared achievements and the moral and intellectual guidance he had provided. These records offer insight into the enduring influence of Albert on her decisions, priorities, and understanding of monarchy. Victoria's continued dedication to his memory shaped the tone and conduct of her reign, blending personal devotion with public service. The long-term impact of Albert's death extended into Britain's social and cultural life. Memorials, charities, and public commemorations reflected the prince's influence and the Queen's commitment to preserving his legacy. Institutions such as hospitals, educational foundations, and cultural organizations benefited from royal patronage inspired by his values. Albert's contributions to the arts, sciences, and industrial advancement continued to resonate, guided by Victoria's efforts to honor his vision for progress and social improvement. In summary, the death of Prince Albert profoundly affected Queen Victoria, altering her personal life, public engagement, and approach to monarchy. Her extended mourning period reflected both deep emotional attachment and the societal expectations of royal conduct. While she reduced public appearances, she maintained constitutional authority, ensuring continuity of governance. Albert's influence persisted through their children, through memorial initiatives, and through the institutions and reforms he had championed. The Queen's response to his death reinforced the monarchy's symbolic role, demonstrating how personal loss and public responsibility could intersect, shaping both historical perception and the future of the British Crown. Chapter 8: Widowhood and Political Influence. The death of Prince Albert left Queen Victoria in a state of profound personal grief, initiating a period of widowhood that lasted for decades and significantly influenced her life, reign, and political interactions. Her withdrawal from public appearances and court functions created both challenges and opportunities for shaping the monarchy, politics, and national life. While her seclusion prompted criticism and concern, it also demonstrated her capacity to exercise influence indirectly through correspondence, counsel, and the careful management of relationships with ministers and family members. Victoria's early widowhood was marked by strict adherence to mourning rituals. She adopted a continuous period of black attire, refrained from public celebrations, and significantly reduced appearances at state functions. This visible demonstration of grief became a defining feature of her reign, symbolizing both devotion to Albert and personal moral integrity. It also reflected the intensity of her emotional attachment and the centrality of her husband's guidance to her understanding of monarchy. Victoria's withdrawal from social life, while initially viewed with some concern, allowed her to exert authority in a more contemplative, measured, and strategic manner. Despite her seclusion, Victoria remained fully engaged in political matters. She maintained regular correspondence with ministers, advisors, and foreign dignitaries, offering opinions, guidance, and decisions on state affairs. Her widowhood shifted the manner in which she exerted influence, moving from public visibility to private consultation. Ministers recognized that while she avoided ceremonial appearances, her judgment and preferences continued to shape government policy, appointments, and diplomatic interactions. This period demonstrated that influence could be exercised effectively without overt public presence, relying instead on discretion, intellect, and moral authority. The Queen's interactions with prime ministers and government officials during this period revealed her evolving political acumen. Victoria consulted ministers through letters, meetings, and memoranda, carefully weighing advice while asserting her perspective on key matters. Her experience with Albert had instilled a respect for informed counsel and strategic thinking. Even in seclusion, she applied these lessons, navigating constitutional constraints with a combination of firmness and prudence. Her interventions were measured and purposeful, ensuring that the monarchy maintained its relevance and authority while respecting parliamentary sovereignty. Victoria's widowhood also shaped her relationship with her children, many of whom were preparing for dynastic roles across Europe. She assumed a central role in overseeing their education, marriages, and public duties, reflecting both her protective instincts and strategic understanding of monarchy. Correspondence and guidance extended across national borders, influencing European alliances and maintaining connections between Britain and other royal courts. This aspect of her widowhood reinforced her reputation as the grandmother of Europe, as her children's positions in various dynasties became a vehicle for both familial and diplomatic influence. Her seclusion was accompanied by a gradual shift in public perception. Initially, there was concern that her withdrawal might weaken the monarchy's connection with the people. Over time, however, the Queen's steadfastness and visible devotion to Albert fostered sympathy and admiration. Public ceremonies, memorials, and commemorations connected to Albert's legacy became occasions for national unity and reflection. Victoria's example reinforced societal values of loyalty, moral principle, and devotion, enhancing the symbolic authority of the crown even in the absence of frequent public appearances. The Queen also exercised considerable influence through her management of patronage and institutional development. She continued to support charitable organizations, educational initiatives, and cultural institutions, guiding them through correspondence, visits, and appointments. Albert's earlier work in arts, science, and industry continued to benefit from her endorsement, ensuring continuity and the extension of his vision. These activities demonstrated that leadership could be maintained and extended without direct ceremonial presence, relying instead on strategic engagement and moral authority. During her widowhood, Victoria also developed a more assertive approach to political appointments and honors. She exercised influence over ministerial selection, judicial appointments, and key governmental decisions, balancing personal preferences with constitutional expectations. While some ministers occasionally sought to test her limits, Victoria's combination of discretion, knowledge, and persistence allowed her to maintain authority and reinforce the monarchy's role in national governance. Her guidance was particularly evident during periods of political instability, when clear direction from the sovereign contributed to continuity and public confidence. Victoria's withdrawal from social life had a profound effect on court operations. Household routines, ceremonial practices, and royal protocols were modified to reflect her mourning. The Queen's focus on privacy and decorum influenced the conduct of courtiers, servants, and officials, creating a disciplined and respectful environment. This approach reinforced the dignity of the monarchy, demonstrating that authority could be expressed through both presence and deliberate absence. The combination of personal integrity, ceremonial adjustment, and moral example helped maintain respect for the crown during a period of emotional seclusion. Her widowhood also influenced Britain's international reputation. Foreign courts, observing her extended mourning and her continued engagement with European dynasties through her children, recognized both her personal devotion and the ongoing political significance of the British monarchy. Victoria's careful management of relationships with foreign rulers, facilitated through correspondence and dynastic alliances, contributed to Britain's diplomatic stability and reinforced the symbolic authority of her reign. Even in seclusion, the Queen remained a central figure in European politics, demonstrating that influence could extend beyond immediate visibility. Over the decades, Victoria gradually reintroduced public engagements, balancing personal mourning with ceremonial and national responsibilities. She became increasingly confident in exercising constitutional authority, hosting official events, and participating in state functions while maintaining the memory and influence of Albert. This gradual return to visibility reflected her growing mastery of political and social leadership, as well as her ability to integrate personal devotion with public duty. The lessons of widowhood informed her long-term approach to monarchy, emphasizing prudence, strategic influence, and the combination of moral authority with practical governance. In summary, Queen Victoria's widowhood had a profound and lasting impact on her reign, shaping her personal life, political influence, and approach to monarchy. Her extended mourning reflected deep emotional attachment to Prince Albert, while her engagement with ministers, dynastic affairs, and public institutions demonstrated effective leadership from a position of seclusion. Through correspondence, strategic guidance, and careful management of the royal household, Victoria maintained authority, shaped policy, and preserved continuity. Widowhood became not only a period of personal grief but also a defining phase in which she exercised influence, reinforced the monarchy's moral authority, and established enduring patterns of leadership that would characterize her long and impactful reign. Chapter 9: Industrial and Social Britain. Queen Victoria's reign coincided with a period of remarkable social transformation in Britain. While the Industrial Revolution had already reshaped the nation's economy and infrastructure, her era witnessed the broadening of its effects into public life, social structures, education, and governance. Victoria's role as monarch was not to directly dictate industrial development, but her influence, through patronage, moral authority, and support for reform, helped shape Britain's adaptation to rapid social change. During her reign, Britain experienced urban expansion on an unprecedented scale. Population growth, combined with migration from rural areas to industrial towns, created both opportunities and challenges. Cities such as Manchester, Birmingham, and London became centres of commerce, manufacturing, and social activity, but overcrowding, poor sanitation, and inadequate housing presented pressing concerns. Victoria and Prince Albert had already emphasized public welfare through charitable initiatives, and even in widowhood, the Queen maintained interest in improving living conditions, particularly through health and education reforms. Education became a key focus of social reform during Victoria's reign. Literacy rates increased significantly, aided by legislation that gradually mandated basic schooling for children across England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. Victoria supported educational initiatives indirectly through patronage, visits to schools, and endorsement of institutions aimed at improving literacy and moral development. These reforms not only prepared a generation for industrial employment but also fostered social mobility, citizenship, and civic engagement. The Queen's moral framework, emphasizing discipline, duty, and personal responsibility, was mirrored in the curricula and pedagogical approaches of many institutions established during this era. Public health and sanitation emerged as central concerns in urban centers. Rapid urbanization had led to overcrowded housing, contaminated water supplies, and the spread of disease. Legislative reforms, influenced by both public advocacy and royal endorsement, gradually addressed these challenges. Acts regulating sanitation, clean water, and waste removal transformed city planning and public services. Victoria's support of these efforts, often through charitable patronage and encouragement of social leaders, reinforced the monarchy's image as attentive to the welfare of its citizens and invested in national progress. The Queen's reign also coincided with shifts in labor laws and workers' rights. Industrialization had created extensive factories and workshops where long hours, unsafe conditions, and minimal wages were common. Reformers, advocates, and parliamentary committees gradually introduced legislation to limit working hours, regulate child labor, and improve conditions for women and men. Victoria's engagement, while indirect, lent prestige and legitimacy to reform initiatives. Royal patronage of societies focused on industrial welfare, moral improvement, and education strengthened the broader movement to create a safer, more equitable society. Transportation and communication advanced significantly during Victoria's era, shaping both social and economic life. Railways expanded rapidly, facilitating movement of people and goods, and enhancing connections between urban and rural areas. The postal system became more efficient, allowing faster communication between citizens and government institutions. Victoria's reign, which emphasized moral responsibility, civic engagement, and national unity, benefited from these developments. Improved transportation enabled her visits to different parts of the kingdom and allowed citizens to experience the monarchy more directly, even as the Queen often maintained a balance between public visibility and private discretion. Cultural and philanthropic initiatives flourished alongside these social changes. Victoria endorsed institutions such as hospitals, libraries, and museums, ensuring that access to health, knowledge, and the arts extended beyond the elite. These initiatives promoted moral and civic education, reflecting the Queen's conviction that social improvement required both structural reform and individual development. The arts, including literature, theatre, and music, were encouraged as instruments of moral and cultural refinement, contributing to a sense of national identity and shared values. Industrial and social reform during Victoria's reign also intersected with gender and family expectations. Women increasingly engaged in charitable work, education, and public service, while still facing significant limitations in political rights. Victoria's personal example, devoted to family, charitable causes, and moral guidance, provided a model for public engagement that complemented societal expectations of femininity and domestic responsibility. Her children and extended family were similarly encouraged to participate in public life in ways that reflected social responsibility, ethical conduct, and civic leadership. Legislation during this period addressed social inequality, public health, and labor conditions incrementally. Reform acts concerning education, public health, and working conditions reflected the influence of reform-minded politicians, social advocates, and, indirectly, the monarchy. Victoria's consistent support of charitable institutions, her endorsement of exhibitions highlighting innovation, and her promotion of civic responsibility lent prestige to these reforms. She demonstrated that the monarchy could serve as a moral guide, providing encouragement and recognition without contravening parliamentary authority. The Queen's engagement with social issues was reinforced by her awareness of public opinion. Newspapers, pamphlets, and public discourse increasingly scrutinized social conditions, and Victoria's endorsement of reformist causes helped guide national priorities. Her approach balanced discretion with influence, promoting initiatives that addressed urgent social needs while maintaining the dignity and neutrality of the monarchy. Over time, her consistent moral and civic guidance helped to shape public attitudes toward education, public welfare, and national responsibility. Victoria's reign also witnessed the expansion of civil society. Charitable organizations, philanthropic societies, and educational institutions flourished, often with royal patronage. These entities worked to alleviate poverty, provide health care, and improve social conditions for children, workers, and marginalized communities. Victoria's influence, expressed through formal support, correspondence, and visits, reinforced the legitimacy of these initiatives and encouraged public engagement. Her involvement signaled that monarchy could be a force for social cohesion, moral guidance, and practical reform. The social transformations of Victoria's era were complex and multifaceted, involving the interplay of industrial growth, urban expansion, education, public health, and moral reform. The Queen's role was not legislative, but her moral authority, patronage, and strategic support allowed her to influence the pace and direction of social progress. She exemplified how a constitutional monarch could guide societal change through example, endorsement, and careful participation in public life, enhancing both national stability and civic responsibility. In conclusion, Queen Victoria's reign encompassed a period of profound industrial and social change. Through support for education, public health, cultural initiatives, charitable organizations, and reformist legislation, she contributed to the shaping of a more informed, responsible, and cohesive society. While the Industrial Revolution had set the stage for these transformations, Victoria's influence as monarch helped ensure that industrial and social progress was accompanied by moral guidance, civic engagement, and national unity. Her engagement with social issues, combined with the continued influence of her family and household, left a lasting impact on Britain, shaping both the nation and the monarchy for generations to come. Chapter 10: Empire and International Relations. Queen Victoria's reign is inseparable from the expansion and consolidation of the British Empire. By the mid-19th century, Britain had emerged as a global power, its influence extending across continents, oceans, and cultures. Victoria's role, while primarily symbolic, reinforced imperial authority, shaped international perceptions, and provided a unifying figure for the empire. Her position as sovereign and, later, as Empress of India, intertwined monarchy with national identity, diplomacy, and colonial governance. The British Empire during Victoria's reign encompassed diverse territories, from India and Canada to Australia, New Zealand, parts of Africa, and various Caribbean colonies. Each region presented unique challenges and opportunities, requiring careful administration, local engagement, and recognition of cultural differences. While policy decisions were the responsibility of ministers and colonial administrators, Victoria's endorsement and symbolic presence reinforced the legitimacy of imperial authority. Her influence extended through royal proclamations, visits, patronage, and diplomatic correspondence, contributing to cohesion within a vast and complex empire. One of the most significant milestones of Victoria's reign was the proclamation as Empress of India in the latter half of the 19th century. This title reflected Britain's direct governance of India following the transfer of authority from the East India Company to the Crown, a shift formalized after the Indian Rebellion of the mid-19th century. Victoria's assumption of the title emphasized her personal connection to the empire, providing a symbolic anchor for British rule. Ceremonial functions, portraits, and official events reinforced this association, strengthening loyalty among colonial administrators and British subjects alike. Victoria's image as sovereign of a global empire had both domestic and international implications. Within Britain, the expansion of imperial authority reinforced national pride, economic opportunity, and cultural influence. The monarchy served as a unifying symbol, linking diverse territories under a common allegiance. Victoria's patronage of imperial institutions, her acknowledgement of colonial achievements, and her correspondence with governors and administrators demonstrated an awareness of the empire's scope and the responsibilities associated with global rule. This approach balanced symbolic authority with the practical management carried out by ministers, civil servants, and local officials. International relations under Victoria were influenced by diplomacy, marriage alliances, and strategic positioning of British power. The Queen's family connections throughout Europe facilitated communication and collaboration with other royal houses, while her symbolic authority provided weight in negotiations and ceremonial occasions. Britain's involvement in continental affairs, colonial conflicts, and treaty arrangements was guided by governmental policy, but Victoria's presence and endorsement lent prestige and continuity to diplomatic initiatives. Her reign coincided with periods of both tension and cooperation among European powers, and her influence helped project an image of stability and moral authority. Trade and economic interests were central to the maintenance of empire. Victoria's era saw the expansion of shipping routes, the development of ports, and the facilitation of commerce between Britain and its colonies. The growth of global trade reinforced Britain's economic dominance and created interdependence among regions, while also demanding effective governance, communication, and oversight. The Queen's role, although primarily ceremonial, supported economic expansion by promoting national cohesion, endorsing industrial and cultural achievements, and encouraging public recognition of imperial achievements. Colonial administration during Victoria's reign required adaptation to diverse political, social, and cultural contexts. India, in particular, presented unique challenges, including management of local rulers, integration of legal and administrative systems, and responses to social unrest. The transfer of authority from the East India Company to the Crown necessitated both structural reform and symbolic reassurance. Victoria's assumption of the title of Empress, along with her correspondence and ceremonial engagement, provided a sense of continuity and legitimacy, reinforcing British governance while acknowledging local hierarchies and traditions. The expansion of the empire was accompanied by investment in infrastructure, education, and governance. Railways, telegraphs, and administrative reforms facilitated communication and control across vast territories. Educational institutions, cultural societies, and charitable initiatives supported social development within colonial contexts, reflecting the values of the monarchy and British society. Victoria's support for these institutions, often through patronage and ceremonial recognition, lent prestige and moral authority to initiatives aimed at both development and stability. Victoria's reign also included military engagement and strategic conflicts within the empire. Wars, territorial expansion, and colonial policing required coordination between the Crown, government, and military leadership. The Queen's symbolic role provided legitimacy to military actions, while her endorsement of military honors and recognition of service reinforced loyalty and morale. Her position emphasized the combination of moral authority and national responsibility, balancing ceremonial influence with practical outcomes administered by ministers and commanders. Public perception of the empire was shaped in part by Victoria's visibility and representation. Portraits, official tours, and commemorations highlighted her role as a unifying figure, while media coverage and literature reinforced awareness of Britain's global reach. Her image as monarch provided a sense of stability, continuity, and moral guidance, helping to integrate diverse populations under the idea of imperial loyalty. Through careful management of her public image, Victoria projected authority and respect across continents, contributing to the perception of Britain as a cohesive, dominant, and morally guided power. The monarchy's relationship with colonial populations was nuanced. While Victoria's direct engagement with everyday governance was limited, her symbolic presence, recognition of local rulers, and support for institutions conveyed acknowledgement and respect. Emphasis on ceremonial occasions, such as the Durbar in India, reinforced cultural hierarchy while fostering loyalty to the Crown. These strategies underscored the monarchy's role as both symbolic head and moral exemplar within the imperial structure, balancing authority with recognition of local traditions and governance. Victoria's influence extended to the shaping of imperial identity and British nationalism. Her long reign, public visibility, and symbolic authority contributed to a sense of continuity and pride during periods of social, economic, and political change. The monarchy became a focal point for unity, linking metropolitan Britain with distant territories through shared allegiance and common symbols. Victoria's personal devotion to duty, moral rectitude, and family values resonated with subjects across the empire, reinforcing both loyalty and the ideals associated with British governance. In summary, Queen Victoria's reign was a defining period for Britain's global presence and international relations. Through her symbolic authority, ceremonial engagement, patronage, and endorsement of institutions, she reinforced imperial legitimacy, fostered diplomatic ties, and contributed to the cohesion of a diverse and expansive empire. The assumption of the title Empress of India, combined with her visibility in public and private spheres, provided a focal point for national and colonial identity. Victoria's influence demonstrated how monarchy, even within constitutional constraints, could shape perception, encourage stability, and sustain a vast and complex network of territories across the globe. Chapter 11: Later Years, Legacy, and Constitutional Monarchy. The later years of Queen Victoria's reign were defined by her adaptation to the changing political, social, and cultural landscape of Britain. By the closing decades of the 19th century, the nation had undergone profound transformation, with industrialization, urbanization, social reform, and imperial expansion reshaping both domestic life and international influence. Victoria's long reign provided continuity, stability, and moral authority during these periods of change, demonstrating the evolving role of the monarchy within a constitutional framework. Victoria's widowhood continued to shape her personal conduct and public presence. Although she had gradually returned to greater visibility in state ceremonies and public events, she remained deeply affected by the death of Prince Albert. Her sense of duty and devotion to the monarchy, however, never wavered, and she continued to guide the royal family, oversee dynastic matters, and engage with ministers and advisors. The Queen's personal discipline and moral standards reinforced the monarchy's authority, demonstrating how individual character could influence the perception of the institution. Politically, Victoria became increasingly adept at navigating constitutional constraints while maintaining symbolic influence. The British monarchy had evolved to function within a parliamentary system, limiting direct intervention in policy decisions. Despite these limitations, Victoria exercised significant moral and ceremonial authority, influencing ministerial appointments, foreign relations, and the public perception of governance. She developed expertise in balancing tradition with the expectations of a modernizing nation, exemplifying the monarchy's capacity for stability, continuity, and adaptability. Victoria's later reign also highlighted the importance of public image and national identity. Portraits, official photographs, and state ceremonies reinforced the monarchy's visibility and moral authority. The Queen's attention to propriety, dress, and ritual communicated both dignity and continuity, emphasizing the symbolic role of the sovereign. Her engagement with subjects through public appearances, correspondence, and patronage reflected an understanding of the monarchy's function as a unifying force, bridging social, political, and regional divides. Family continued to play a central role in Victoria's later years. Her children and grandchildren were strategically positioned across Europe, strengthening diplomatic alliances and reinforcing Britain's influence. Victoria's correspondence with them guided dynastic decisions, marriage arrangements, and public responsibilities, ensuring that family members adhered to the values of duty, morality, and service. Her reputation as the grandmother of Europe was solidified during this period, with her influence extending far beyond Britain's borders and contributing to European diplomacy and stability. Social and cultural developments were also significant during Victoria's later reign. The Queen supported charitable initiatives, educational reform, and public welfare, demonstrating continued concern for the nation's well-being. Her patronage of hospitals, schools, and cultural institutions reinforced the monarchy's moral and civic role, providing practical benefits while enhancing public perception. Victoria's involvement exemplified the symbolic power of the crown to encourage social cohesion, moral responsibility, and civic engagement. Victoria's relationship with her ministers evolved in her later years. While constitutional limits prevented direct interference in legislative matters, she remained an active participant in the political life of the nation through advice, counsel, and correspondence. Her experience, wisdom, and authority ensured that her guidance was respected and valued. The Queen's ability to maintain influence without overstepping constitutional boundaries reflected her understanding of monarchy as a stabilizing institution, capable of shaping national life through moral authority, ceremonial leadership, and personal counsel. Internationally, Victoria's position as sovereign provided symbolic legitimacy and continuity for Britain's global influence. Her engagement with colonial administrators, foreign monarchs, and European governments reinforced diplomatic stability and demonstrated Britain's commitment to international order. The Queen's personal correspondence and strategic guidance maintained cohesion across territories and alliances, reflecting the interconnected nature of monarchy, diplomacy, and national identity during the late 19th century. Victoria's later years were marked by public celebration of her long reign. Milestone events, such as jubilees, reinforced national unity and pride, drawing attention to the stability and continuity of the monarchy. The Golden and Diamond Jubilees, in particular, provided opportunities for public recognition of her dedication, endurance, and service to the nation. These celebrations emphasized both the symbolic and practical significance of a long and consistent reign, reinforcing the monarchy's role in national consciousness and identity. The Queen's legacy was multifaceted, encompassing political, social, cultural, and familial influence. Politically, she contributed to the development of constitutional monarchy, demonstrating the effectiveness of symbolic authority and moral leadership within a parliamentary system. Socially and culturally, she supported reform, education, and public welfare, reinforcing values of duty, morality, and civic engagement. Her family connections extended Britain's influence across Europe, contributing to diplomacy and international stability. Collectively, these elements shaped the perception of monarchy as both a stabilizing institution and a moral exemplar. Victoria's later reign also reflected the adaptation of monarchy to modern conditions. The combination of personal discipline, moral authority, ceremonial engagement, and strategic guidance exemplified the monarchy's capacity to remain relevant in a rapidly changing society. Her example demonstrated that monarchy could provide continuity, unity, and ethical leadership, even when formal power was limited. The lessons of her later years informed both contemporary and subsequent understanding of the constitutional monarchy in Britain. In summary, the later years of Queen Victoria's reign were defined by adaptation, continuity, and influence. Through her personal example, engagement with family, support for social and cultural institutions, and careful navigation of political relationships, she maintained the monarchy's relevance and authority. Her long reign, marked by both personal devotion and public responsibility, left a legacy of moral guidance, national cohesion, and dynastic influence. Victoria's enduring impact exemplifies the capacity of constitutional monarchy to combine symbolic authority with practical engagement, shaping national life and influencing generations beyond her lifetime. Chapter 12: Death, Succession, and Historical Legacy. Queen Victoria's death marked the end of an era, closing a reign that had shaped Britain, its empire, and the institution of monarchy. Her passing occurred after a reign of more than 6 decades, making her the longest-serving British sovereign of her time. Victoria's death was both a personal and national event, reflecting her centrality to public life, her symbolic authority, and her enduring influence on political, social, and cultural developments. In the final years of her life, Victoria remained committed to her duties despite advancing age and declining health. She continued to oversee family matters, correspond with ministers, and engage with public and charitable initiatives, maintaining the dignity and visibility of the monarchy. Her physical health gradually deteriorated, reflecting the natural consequences of aging and the cumulative stress of a long and active reign. Nonetheless, she remained mentally alert, engaged, and committed to her responsibilities, exemplifying the combination of personal discipline and public service that had characterized her life. Victoria's death followed a period of illness during which she was attended by physicians and family members. The Queen passed away peacefully, surrounded by her household, leaving instructions for a dignified and private farewell. Her death was formally announced to the nation, and the news was received with widespread mourning and reflection. Public ceremonies, flags at half-mast, and memorial services underscored the Queen's symbolic role as a unifying figure, demonstrating the depth of attachment and respect she had inspired over decades of service. Succession was immediate and constitutional, with her eldest son, Edward, assuming the throne as King Edward VII. The transfer of authority proceeded according to established protocols, emphasizing the continuity and stability of the monarchy. Edward inherited a kingdom shaped by industrial advancement, imperial expansion, and constitutional development, reflecting the framework established and nurtured during his mother's long reign. The transition also highlighted the importance of dynastic planning, familial guidance, and institutional stability, areas to which Victoria had devoted significant attention throughout her life. Victoria's death marked the end of the Victorian era, a period synonymous with social transformation, industrial development, and imperial consolidation. Her reign had witnessed profound changes in the economy, society, politics, and culture, with the monarchy evolving in parallel to these developments. Victoria's influence extended to education, public welfare, charitable engagement, moral guidance, and international diplomacy, leaving a legacy that blended personal devotion with public service. The Victorian era became a benchmark for historical study, encapsulating the challenges and opportunities of a rapidly changing world under a long and stable monarchy. Historically, Victoria's legacy encompasses the consolidation of constitutional monarchy in Britain. Her long reign demonstrated the effectiveness of symbolic authority combined with adherence to parliamentary governance. She guided the monarchy through periods of social unrest, industrial change, and political evolution, maintaining dignity, continuity, and public trust. Her example provided a model for subsequent monarchs, showing that influence could be exercised effectively through moral authority, ceremonial engagement, and measured intervention rather than direct legislative power. Victoria's dynastic impact extended across Europe. Through her children and grandchildren, she established connections with multiple royal houses, reinforcing Britain's influence and shaping European diplomacy. Her family became central to the network of European monarchies, creating political and social alliances that endured beyond her lifetime. This aspect of her legacy underscored the interplay between personal life, family strategy, and national interest, demonstrating how monarchy could influence international relations through dynastic planning and representation. Culturally and socially, Victoria's reign shaped national identity and values. Her emphasis on morality, duty, and public service influenced literature, education, and civic expectations. Charitable patronage, support for cultural institutions, and engagement with public welfare initiatives demonstrated the monarchy's capacity to guide social norms and public behavior. Victoria's image, whether in portraits, photographs, or commemorations, became a symbol of stability, continuity, and ethical leadership, reinforcing the monarchy's moral and symbolic authority. The Queen's approach to imperial affairs contributed to Britain's global influence and cohesion. Through symbolic representation, patronage of colonial institutions, and engagement with administrators, she reinforced loyalty, stability, and the perception of moral leadership within the empire. The title of Empress of India and her visible connection to colonial territories underscored the monarchy's role in providing continuity and legitimacy across vast regions. Her influence extended to both metropolitan Britain and distant territories, highlighting the monarchy's dual function as national symbol and global authority. Victoria's personal life and character also contributed to her historical reputation. Her devotion to Prince Albert, adherence to moral principles, commitment to duty, and careful management of family and household shaped the perception of monarchy as a moral exemplar. Her prolonged mourning for Albert, disciplined conduct, and engagement with dynastic and political responsibilities demonstrated the integration of personal devotion with public obligation. This blending of private and public life became a defining feature of her reign and a focal point for historical assessment. Victoria's death prompted reflection on the broader implications of her reign. Historians recognize the stability, continuity, and modernization she brought to the monarchy, alongside her influence on social reform, cultural development, and imperial cohesion. The Victorian era, named in her honor, symbolizes a period of transformation that combined industrial progress, social change, and political evolution with enduring monarchical presence. Her reign set precedents for constitutional monarchy, public engagement, and dynastic strategy, providing a framework for subsequent British sovereigns. Memorialization and historical recognition of Victoria's life and reign were immediate and enduring. Monuments, statues, and commemorative projects reinforced public memory of her influence, contributions, and character. Institutions bearing her name reflected her support for education, culture, and public welfare, ensuring that her impact extended beyond her lifetime. Victoria's historical reputation, shaped by contemporary accounts, later historical scholarship, and public commemoration, underscores her significance as a central figure in British and world history. In conclusion, Queen Victoria's death marked the end of a transformative reign that reshaped Britain, its empire, and the monarchy itself. Her succession by Edward VII ensured continuity, while her legacy of moral authority, dynastic influence, social engagement, and constitutional adaptation endured. Victoria's life exemplifies the integration of personal devotion with public responsibility, demonstrating the capacity of a constitutional monarch to influence national identity, governance, and international relations. Her reign left an indelible mark on history, shaping the course of Britain, Europe, and the broader world for generations to come.